beyond just Dr. King and his warm words to Israel, there were a lot of civil rights leaders who stood with Israel very proudly in the 70s, 60s and 70s. Music is my first love, and so when I started really learning about Israel, I just kind of started to weave into my music. Olga really embodied the Africa-Israel relationship, that highway to Zion. Her legacy, it lives on in us and her children especially.
I'm pleased to welcome Joshua Washington. Joshua, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Tell us what inspired you to start your journey in Black-Jewish relations and support for Israel.
Well, it was actually my father, Dumisani Washington. He founded the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel in 2013. I was fresh out of college, and for maybe those 2 years, I was just reading things, but watching him and then being able to research with him and find out things. I realized that it wasn't just something that was interesting, but it was something that I also had a stake in, that there were a lot of civil rights leaders who stood with Israel very proudly in the 70s, 60s and 70s. And that was one thing that my father had found, was a newspaper clipping in the basement of a library about an organization called Black Americans Supporting Israel Committee, which was founded by Bayard Rustin. And it had so many people on there, like Rosa Parks and Arthur Ashe and Martin Luther King Sr. and Coretta Scott King. And so for me, I said, well, I didn't realize that we had this kind of legacy, beyond just Dr. King and his warm words to Israel. There was actually this whole community that coalesced around Jews in America and standing with Israel and standing against the terrors that come against Israel and Africa. So it was something that really, it piqued my interest, and then I just kind of went down this rabbit hole, and now I'm working with my dad and speaking and writing and advocating and all those things as well.
And what are the most common misconceptions about African American support, Black support for Israel?
One of the biggest ones when it comes to Black American support for Israel is that somehow we're doing this at the behest of the Israeli government, or somewhere on someone's payroll, right? To do this, and people can't really fathom that there are Black Americans who have their own minds, who do their own research, and have come to their own conclusions about what's going on in the Middle East, and who the real perpetrators are, and Israel's role in actually countering those things. So they struggle with that. So a lot of times they'll come at us in that way. But over the years, we've garnered a lot of support from the Black community who didn't really know much and were inspired by this group of Black people who obviously were not doing this for the popularity, and that actually drew people to us, which is how we've been able to grow over the years.
What's the strength and importance of that? The buzzword nowadays is allyship, partnership, friendship between the two communities.
Right. The strength, I think it's rooted in friendship, a genuine relationship. Even more so, I would say Stand With Us, but also just you, Michael, and our friends that Stand With Us, Roz, and they've been such friends to our family. And you guys have been so open and welcoming to us that it's a genuine partnership. I think that's a natural outgrowth, when you can actually start with even outside of all this, we check in with each other. When I'm here, we'll meet up. When you're in the States, we'll meet up. And that's something I think that gives a natural kind of allyship, to where when it's time to work together, that's like the easy part. The easy part is, okay, let's put together something beautiful and let's make something happen. All that stuff becomes easy, I think.
And I mentioned, at the beginning, we hear the vocal voices. The vocal voices are often the kind of shrill voices, the divisive voices. Right. So, what should we be listening to? What should we be tuning our ear to?
Yeah, I think, first of all, IPSI, but I think there are a lot of people, both that we partner with and also just that we've been observing over the years, that give it's not always as sexy, right? The account they give, sometimes it doesn't hit as hard as the being divisive. Being divisive is kind of easy. You say a couple of buzzwords. But there are a lot of people who, in the name of, Bayard Rustin and Leontine Price and those characters, they have close relationships with the Jewish communities in the areas. We have partners in Chicago, pastors who work very closely with Stand With Us in Chicago and with us. And they don't just come together for the sake of coming together, but they're actually bettering the community, in Chicago. They're actually bettering the areas that are most dangerous, and there's a partnership there. There's a genuine wanting to move the needle forward. And so
it's easier to talk, it's harder to do.
Exactly. So like Pastor Corey Brooks in Chicago is one of our closest partners. He's he's about the work, and so when he partners with people in Chicago like Peggy Shapiro, and they really do something powerful, and I think those are the people that we want to listen to. Those are the people who, like I said, it's easier to talk about. It's easier to say, oh, no, but they actually get their hands dirty and they put their hands to the plow. Those people, I think, they need to be elevated as much as possible.
And you're also unifying people through music. Tell us a bit about your music and how your faith, how Israel penetrates into the story that you're telling through your music.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, music is my first love. And so when I started really learning about Israel, I just kind of started to weave into my music. And, growing up playing in church, growing up in an environment where I was always playing all the time, even if I didn't know what I was supposed to be playing, just kind of figuring things out and developing that skill. And then with all the things that I've been learning that really just touched my heart and grew inside of me, I think now I'm at a place where I can really write the things that I'm feeling and articulate in a really good way and communicate to people who don't know. The first show on my tour is here in Jerusalem, but after that it's we're in London and then all across the U.S. and they really get to get a piece of, I think anyway, a piece of Israel, a piece of like this history through music that they probably would never get because they probably would never go to a political event or something that we would put on through IPSI. So it's a door, and I think I'm grateful to be able to be that door for people to at least get a peek into something that they probably would have never looked at.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't speak about your late wife, who we much loved, Olga Mishri Washington, originally from South Africa.
Yeah.
Lived with you, and of course your beautiful 2 kids.
Thank you.
In America. Tell us what the legacy of her work is.
It is. So Olga's legacy is vast and very deep. And again, I want to say thank you because you guys were like the first people to step in when she was just in the hospital. We didn't even know what was going to happen. And, Stand With Us came in and supported us. You guys set up a GoFundMe for us and just for her recovery. And then things kind of went south quickly. And you guys were right there. So I appreciate you for that. Thank you. And yeah, her legacy is one of really it's, standing on the shoulders of Queen Makeda, when she came to visit King Solomon 3,000 years ago. And she embodied that. Olga really embodied that Africa-Israel relationship, that highway to Zion, and the fact that we were able to have our ceremony here, that she was buried in Haifa, like that speaks volumes, I think, for the kind of person that she was. And so this tour even is in her honor. There's songs that were written for her before she passed that she never got to hear, and then since she passed, and her legacy, it lives on in us and her children especially. We're working on something now so that when they're older, they can actually see who their mom was in all these different facets, because it's important, for them to know the shoes that they have to fill as they get older.
And she was incredible. We have such admiration for her, for your family, for her family. It's really both beautiful families. And her funeral was such a tribute and such an honor rightly bestowed upon her by the state of Israel. People want to learn more about your work and also about your music. Where should they go?
For our work, you can go to ibsi.org. You'll see everything. We have a Substack that we update all the time with podcasts, videos, all those things, and events. And for me, you can go to jodavimusic.com. Again, I'm on...
Jodavi, that's Jodavi.
Jodavi, yes, sir. jodavimusic.com. I'm on a tour right now. Love to see whoever's around and make some beautiful music together.
Incredible. Well, I'm privileged to be attending the tour. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for all that you do.
Thank you.
Much admiration to you.
Thank you.